Hello folks, once again, this is Chris with Indaba Africa. Today, May 6th, 2020. Yet more distressing news out of South Africa, as with the business rescue filing yesterday, the 5th of May, by Comair, South Africa's commercial airline industry has effectively collapsed for all intents and purposes. So what are we talking about here? Comair, founded in 1943, a South African commercial aviation company, also the franchisee for British Airways in South Africa. So they fly the British BA flag on their aircraft in South Africa. Has a fleet of 20 aircraft, flies to 11 destinations, both domestically and internationally. In 2018, the airline was profitable, although in 2019 it did slip into the red. But in 2018, it had revenues of 6.54 billion rand, or in today's dollars, $363 million US, and a profit of 471 million rand, or $26 million US, something that South African Airways has not seen since at least 2013, profitability. Comair flies 5.8 million passengers each year and has 2,206 employees. Its international destinations included Mauritius, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe. Domestic flights were to Cape Town, Durban, Joburg, and Port Elizabeth. Now, Comair also is the whole owner of the Kulula subsidiary, a discount airline in South Africa, wholly owned by Comair. Kulula has 10 aircraft and flies to 6 destinations, and famously it flies the 737-800, has 9 of those aircraft in its inventory. Kulula flies between East London, Port Elizabeth, Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and George. Now, the airline has been shut down since the 17th of March this year as a consequence of the African National Congress's nationwide draconian lockdown in the face of the Wuhan coronavirus, or COVID-19, as the country seeks to limit the spread of the virus and contain the impact of it from a public health standpoint. But as with most businesses in South Africa, these draconian measures are having an adverse impact on the company. As a consequence of the government lockdown, the company's revenue stream has been obliterated and is making virtually no money since it cannot fly its aircraft. Regardless of the fact that it still has no income coming in, the company still has fixed costs it must deal with. For instance, it has to pay for the cost of the aircraft it has and make its payments in dollars, and that has been quite a problem for it. Interestingly enough, as Comair has been forced into sitting around with its planes on the ground by government action and not letting people move around the country by ground or by air, the company had reached out to the South African government for some kind of special assistance or aid, and that has fallen on deaf ears. Now, to be fair to the government of South Africa, the ANC's mismanagement of its economy for the past 15 years and wholesale state capture and corruption and theft of state funds, as well as funding parastatals like Eskom and South African Airways, which eat through cash, has left the African National Congress in desperate financial straits and ill-prepared for the arrival of the coronavirus. Consequently, it's understandable that the government has nothing to offer to Comair as far as a rescue package. Nonetheless, the South African government has been contracting flights, charter flights, to repatriate South African citizens from around the world, and this has been done through South African Airways, among others. But we've not seen these flights handed over to Comair. Why is it that the private carrier is left to die while the state-owned carrier, which has lived off of the government teat for the past 7 years, gets the contract flights? Now, what's happening with Comair is it's going through business rescue, or as we would call it here in the United States, Chapter 11 reorganization, an effort to salvage the company and refocus it and adjust its billing scheme and its debt so that the company can survive. So it's a reorganization. However, South African Express, or SA Express, also went through a business rescue and now is in liquidation. That was announced at the beginning of the lockdown. South African Airways was in business rescue since last winter and now is likely to be liquidated, as it has no options after the government refused to give it an additional bailout. So what happens now with Comair? Will it survive the business rescue, or will it also be liquidated? Whatever the case is, Comair's 5.8 million passengers and South African Airways' 9.7 million passengers, so just under 15 or around 15 million passengers who fly each and every year in South Africa and out of the country, will now be left wondering how they'll get around after this lockdown is over, with South African Airways unable to operate, unable to pay its bills, to pay its staff, to pay for avgas, and we wonder what will happen with Comair. Will that be the same situation? So the Comair fixed costs include paying for the 737 fleet. In November, the rand was 14.7 to the US dollar, and today it's 18.56 to the dollar. Now that's not insignificant because the payments that Comair must make are in dollars to Boeing. And so the collapse of the rand, also due to the mismanagement of South Africa's economy by the ruling party, has put more pressure on Comair and put them in even worse condition than they would have been. Effectively, with this filing, South Africa's commercial aviation industry has collapsed, leaving likely as many as 15 million passengers wondering how they'll get around. So what's next? If SA Express is gone, SAA is in the process of being liquidated, and Comair now goes into business rescue, this effectively eviscerates the commercial aviation market in South Africa. Now, there's other carriers who come to South Africa, Lufthansa, Ethiopian, lots of others who come to South Africa. But internally, and for South African carriers, what does this mean? What is the next sector of the economy that must collapse before the African National Congress wakes up to fiscal and economic realities and adjust the lockdown in an effective way that doesn't destroy livelihoods and businesses in South Africa? What do we have to see go next? Will the tourism industry collapse? Will we see hotel chains go away? For instance, the Soho Sun chain, formerly known as the Southern Sun chain, its stock was trading in August for 460 cents, South African cents. And today, well, on April 2nd, it collapsed as low as 131. Today it's a little bit higher, but it's about a quarter of what it was just a few months ago as a consequence of the economic situation. One can imagine that it's only going to get worse, and we wonder if the Soho Sun, a chain that's been around for decades, will survive this as well. Now, the Protea chain, another South African chain, is likely to survive in no small measure because the Protea was purchased by the Marriott Group a few years ago and now belongs to the American Marriott chain. So it's likely that the Marriott, who's getting assistance from the U.S. government for the crisis here, may be able to help the Protea chain weather the crisis. So there you have it, folks. The Comair business reorganization, business rescue. SA Express, gone. SAA, in the process of being gone. And now Comair on the table. And this is important because it's not just Comair and SAA. SAA, South African Airways, also is the owner of Mango, which is a discount airline. And then Comair is the whole owner of Kulula. The four of those are the main commercial aviators in South Africa carrying commercial aviation traffic and passengers around the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to bring you this bad news. It's very distressing to hear this news, to say the least, especially from the aviation industry. But not just that, anybody with compassion for the economic situation in South Africa, as South Africans confront this unusual situation, which has been exacerbated by government action, while journalists run around the world and pat themselves and the South African government on the back for its decisive action in limiting the spread. They're wholly ignoring the economic cost as people stand in miles-long queues for food packets, and surfers are arrested on beaches by overzealous police when people are not putting others at risk because they maintain their social distance, but they're not doing what the police think they should be doing. Business rescue for Comair. If you enjoy the content, I ask that you feel free to subscribe to the channel by pushing that button right down there. Also, toggle that little switch to make sure you get notifications of all my videos, whether they're prepared ones like this or live streams. And I ask that if you enjoy the content or you found it provocative, please push the like button there. Likes are important, not to inflate my ego, but because YouTube, the more likes you have as the number of views you have, it's more likely they'll promote the video. So I thank you for your time. This has been an Indaba Africa production. This is Chris. We'll see you next time here on Indaba Africa.